He told us he was leaving our mom, but he would still be our dad. Well, I was 14, and till this day, he hasn't been around to tuck me in at night, help me with my homework, teach me about dating or about cars, and ultimately, my dad was not around to walk me down the aisle. My parents were youth pastors when I was a young child, and we actually moved over to the mission field and were missionaries for most of my childhood. And we had a really cool family. I remember my dad was very involved in my life and my sister's life, and he was the cool dad. All the kids in the neighborhood would always come over to our house and play because our dad would actually spend time with us, and he would take us swimming, and he would play basketball with us and go roller skating. And my parents were very affectionate and just thought everything was perfect.
We were in the ministry. He was a minister. We were missionaries on the mission field in Latin America at the time. And he decided he had enough.
Sure enough, one day he sat us down and just said that he was tired. He was tired of the responsibility of being a dad, of being a provider. He was just done. He didn't want a family.
He was tired of his job. He was tired of serving Christ. He was tired of the marriage. He just wanted a whole new beginning. He wanted out of everything. So he walked away from his faith. He walked away from his job. He walked away from the family.
When my dad left, I lost a lot of faith in God. You know, I didn't understand how he could let this happen to us. So I ran the complete opposite direction.
She fell off the deep end, I guess I should say, and she got into things that she shouldn't have gotten into. She was miserable, and she was making life miserable for everybody else.
I started getting involved with drugs. I started leading a very promiscuous lifestyle, and I told my mom that it was her fault, that she drove my dad away. And it was such a low time. I remember thinking that there was no point to live. I tried to kill myself a few times, and I remember holding a knife to my mom and telling her that it was all her fault.
You have your faith set in a little box. All of a sudden that box was shaken. Those parameters are shaken. It was hard for me. It was much harder for my daughters. Everything that we had taught them from the time they were children, the foundation that they were taught, what marriage is, what Christian life is, to see their dad walk away, it just shook their foundation and their stability.
She's the one that still loves me, and she loved me unconditionally throughout all of those times. And if it weren't for her faith, and if it weren't for me watching her pray every day for God's help, I don't know that I would still be here. I was in so much trouble when we were in Florida. I really just made a mess of things. And I had to go to her finally just one day and lay it out in front of her, you know, just tell her, if we didn't get out of there, I wasn't gonna make it.
One day, Amber came to me and she was crying, and she realized, she says, "Mom, we need to move. I need to get out of here, because if we stay here, I'm not gonna make it." I had to make a decision at that time to either stay with the job. I had a job working for Zondervan Publishing Company, which was a very good job, or to move to Springfield, where my family lived here, my parents, to give my daughter a chance to start a new life and get her life back with God.
So we moved to Springfield, and we got involved in church, and I rededicated my life to God. And ever since that day, it's just been a daily growing experience. And God has just been so compassionate. You know, I had there for a long time not wanted to get married or get involved. You know, I had lost faith in marriage, but God has completely blessed me with a wonderful husband.
To see where we have come and to where we've been, I mean, it's unbelievable what God has done in our lives. I mean, it's just amazing that what He can do with our marriage.
I'm very blessed to have a husband who is very faithful and serves the Lord. And we've been married for 3 years now, but it hasn't always been easy. When we first got married, you know, Darren really had to deal with a lot of the emotional baggage that I still carried from coming from a divorced family.
The divorce is a big scar on a relationship, not just the two people it affects, but it just trickles down to, you know, the family. And even our relationship, we had to deal with some issues.
Just little things. It could be a movie that we watched. It could be something in a song, or maybe something that was said or an action that was done. Just any little thing could trigger a memory or an emotion, and I could just blow up and take it out on him, and he had no idea what it was. And it was really just me having to deal with things that had happened in my past and things that my father had done.
I remember the first time she told me that her mom was divorced, and I thought, so? I mean, how does that affect us? But you know, it does.
Darren is very much the communicator, and he wants to sit down and talk about it, whereas I'm just used to bottling it up and holding it inside. So it really took a while for us to figure out what was causing some of our arguments early on in our marriage.
When we started attending Marriages by Design, I remember Brian standing up there saying, you know, we don't use the word divorce, we just call it the D word. And I remember him saying, you know, that the D word is not an option.
I feel very fortunate and I feel very blessed, especially to be part of a wonderful class like Marriages by Design, where we can feed our marriage and build it up and use components from that class to build a wonderful, strong marriage and be an example to others.